Bill Carlson, Tampa City Council member for District 4, which is South Tampa. And I've got Jeff Natupsky here, who helped organize this event. He's a community leader, neighborhood leader, and activist in South Tampa. Thanks, Jeff. And we've also got two folks from the city of Tampa who will introduce themselves in a minute. This is a town hall meeting on flooding and stormwater. The idea is to make sure that folks know about what's happening, what the city is doing to address the issues, and to answer all your questions. So along the way, if you have any questions, just post them underneath the feed or to the right of it if you're watching on Facebook on your computer. So without further ado, could each of you just introduce yourselves for a few seconds? Start with Jeff.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Natupsky. I'm a neighborhood leader, community activist down in South Gandy. And I've been working with Councilman Carlson and others and bringing attention down to the problems that we have down in South Gandy. Flooding is a major concern, so I appreciate yourself and the other gentlemen coming down and presenting to our neighborhood.
All right, great, thank you. And again, thanks for helping set this up. Ben, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. My name is Ben Alashewski. I'm an engineer with the City of Tampa Stormwater Engineering Division. We are part of the mobility department at the city, and glad to be here today. And thanks for having us.
Great, thanks. And Vic.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Vic Bide, Director of the Mobility Department. We oversee transportation, stormwater, and parking related concerns. I'd just like to say that we're aware of the concerns that the South of Gandy community has conveyed, both transportation and stormwater. We're cognizant of what we need to do. Resources, of course, have been a concern in the past, but Ben is going to outline the various projects that we are going to undertake, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And for the questions and concerns that people have, we have a lot of people in Tampa and South Tampa who are new to the community and might not know the information that we're going to talk about in a minute. In South Gandy in particular, we've got a lot of folks for McDill. Thank you for your service. And Jeff, thanks for your service in the Marines. There's a lot of things that have changed in the last few years. What was it, 4 years ago, a new stormwater tax was passed. A transportation tax was passed, all that's being challenged in the Supreme Court right now. The new mayor who started a year and a half ago, Mayor Jane Castor, has completely changed all the senior management team at the city of Tampa. She's put in new strategic plans and new measurement goals. I'm new as of a year and a half ago or 15 months ago, as are several of the city council members. And so we're all eagerly trying to help solve these problems together. Vic is the new head of transportation, and his predecessor, Gene Duncan, is now the head of all the stormwater and water departments. And the idea is to try to integrate it as pipes are changed. It makes sense to look at how the roads are done. So if some of you are worried about potholes, transportation and stormwater are connected because they're going to be done at the same time. And Vic has done a great job of reaching out to lots of people in the community. And I'm meeting Ben for the first time, but I'm excited to hear what he's going to say. And I will say this again at the end, but you can contact any of us, but I will give you my email address, bill.carlson, C-A-R-L-S-O-N, bill.carlson @tampagov.net. bill.carlson@tampagov.net. If you have any questions or concerns, you have a pothole, you have flooding in your yard, something like that, staff is always there to help you. But if you need me to take a look at it and talk to staff about it, I'm happy to be your advocate as well. So I will hand it off to Ben to present now. Thank you.
All right, let's see. Can you all see my screen? Oh,
yeah.
Let's see here. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, how's that? Can you see that now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So thank you, Councilman Carlson, and thank you to everyone joining us today. These are certainly unique times for everyone right now during this pandemic, and I'm thankful that we have the ability to still discuss these important issues with the public. As stated previously, my name is Ben Alashewski, and I'm an engineer with the City of Tampa Stormwater Engineering Division. Today, I will be discussing all things stormwater as it relates to the city of Tampa and specifically the area south of Gandy Boulevard. As you all know, this area has been long plagued with chronic flooding issues, and I plan to address those issues in my presentation today. So I will also touch on sustainability and resilience as it relates to flooding and water quality in the city of Tampa. I'm going to touch on some projects that the Stormwater Engineering Division has recently completed and are currently under construction in the area south of Gandy Boulevard. I'm also going to briefly touch on our stormwater assessments and how the assessments have enabled the city to fund projects that relieve flooding. Then I'll get into the Lower Peninsula Watershed Management Plan, which I'm sure a lot of you will be very interested in. This specifically addresses flooding issues south of Gandy and what we plan to do to alleviate flooding. And with the Lower Peninsula Watershed Management Plan comes our first large capital improvement project south of Gandy. And we are calling that project the Southeast Region Project. And I plan to touch on that and explain what we plan to do and how it will benefit the public. And then just lastly, I will go over some general communications and contact information and also give you all a chance to ask some questions. And I promise I'll do my best to provide a response or at least pass the question on to the project manager in charge. Let's see here. So Transforming Tampa's Tomorrow, or T3, this is Mayor Castor's new approach to addressing key issues facing our city. The mayor has formed an advisory team, as the councilman was saying, that is made up of city staff, community leaders, subject matter experts in order to find smart solutions that will improve the quality of life for our community. The main goal of the teams is to create and carry out a visionary plan for Tampa's future. And the mayor's 5 primary focus areas for the advisory teams include transportation, development services, workforce development, housing affordability, and sustainability and resilience. As you can see, I have the sustainability and resilience in bold here with the yellow arrow because this area is directly related to stormwater management, and it's a really important topic. So to expand more on sustainability and resilience, that's a tongue twister. Just a few months ago, the city of Tampa hired our first ever sustainability and resiliency officer, Whit Reamer. Whit's position is a new senior level position that will oversee the management of sustainability and resiliency at the city of Tampa. I might just call that SNR from now on if you guys are okay with that. This is extremely exciting as Whit will be in charge of implementing the city of Tampa's SNR roadmap, as well as developing a Tampa climate action and resiliency plan. The stormwater department definitely plans to work with Whit in the months and years to come as we tackle difficult stormwater management issues. The city of Tampa is committed to finding ways to build a stronger, greener, and more resilient city. As our city grows, we want to ensure that we are implementing sustainable practices that can be scaled as our population grows in the future. This will allow us to meet the needs of a growing city while supporting the critical services that are essential to daily life. Part of this commitment involves identifying green energy solutions that will minimize our ecological footprint and environmental impact, as well as identifying green infrastructure solutions to more efficiently manage stormwater runoff. And here I have an example that shows a green infrastructure element that we are beginning to incorporate in a lot of our new stormwater projects, and that is pervious pavement. You may have seen this around the town or on other projects in other areas of the country, but it's a really cool technology that utilizes a type of pavement that allows rainfall and runoff to percolate into the pavement and filter out harmful pollutants instead of allowing that runoff to immediately enter our storm sewers, rivers, and oceans. This is an example of the pervious pavement. I have a little cross section here. We recently installed on another project on Estrella Street as part of our Dale Mabry Henderson trunk line project. This just demonstrates one small element of green infrastructure that the city of Tampa is committed to pursuing now and in the future. So it's no secret that Tampa, and especially the area south of Gandy, has a lot of flooding problems. Tampa is a difficult place to manage stormwater and flooding for a number of reasons. Our city is a relatively old city, and so we have a lot of old and aging infrastructure like stormwater pipes and other utilities that need to be replaced. But another difficult aspect of Tampa when it comes to stormwater is that it's just so flat down here, which makes it harder to drain the land. Stormwater systems are typically designed to allow gravity to carry the rainfall away from the land surface, but sometimes that's difficult here and requires more creative solutions. We're also surrounded by an ocean, and during a high tide event, if it happens to coincide with a heavy rainstorm, then it's harder for water to drain out to the bay. And this will become ever more apparent in the years to come as we experience sea level rise. But we're also experiencing more frequent and intense rainstorms. You'll notice that sometimes we get those really quick but intense rainstorms that dump a ton of water in a very short time period. And those short, intense storms greatly exceed the capacity of our stormwater system. I mean, as you guys know, 2020 has been a really crazy year, but this year we've already had at least 5 storms that dumped over 2 inches of rain within an hour, which is a lot of rain, and these storms significantly stress our stormwater systems. So now I want to begin focusing on what the Stormwater Department has done recently to alleviate some of the flooding south of Gandy and what we plan to do about it in the future. Oops. Here's a map I put, I'm sorry, let me go back a second. There we go. Here's a map I put together. It just shows a handful of the recent projects the Stormwater Department has completed or are currently under construction south of Gandy. There were some ponding issues on Ballast Point Boulevard near the intersection of McDill, and we recently put some new drains and pipes in to alleviate that flooding. There's long been severe flooding issues in the area of Wyoming Avenue, Inner Bay, and South 2nd Street. And we are currently in the process of finishing up construction on South 2nd Street, and that's going to create a new drainage system in that area and tied into an existing stormwater system further downstream to help solve some flooding issues. I'm told that project is nearing completion. Just a few others here that we've done recently at Binneker Avenue and South 4th Street. There were some localized flooding issues, and we have recently installed new pipes, drains, and regraded the roadway to alleviate the flooding. And then in the area of Iowa Avenue and Sheridan Road is another area that we've recently completed a project to install new pipes and inlets to drain the roadway more effectively. And then lastly, along Himes from Markham down to Inner Bay, down by Gadsden Park, the city installed a ditch and culvert system to more effectively drain the area. So again, these are just a handful of some smaller projects that the city has completed recently to solve some minor flooding issues south of Gandy. Before I jump into the projects that we have upcoming, I wanted to briefly mention our stormwater assessment program, which is really important for us. The city has 2 assessments for our stormwater department, the service assessment and the improvement assessment. The service assessment was adopted in 2003, and it is an annual non-ad valorem assessment that pays for operations and maintenance of our existing stormwater system. That's services like street sweeping, pond maintenance, pipeline system cleaning, outfall cleaning, and ditch maintenance, to name a few. But in 2016, the city of Tampa adopted the stormwater improvement assessment, which is also another annual non-ad valorem assessment, but it pays for stormwater capital improvement projects in our central and lower basement improvement areas, which is basically everything in the city limits south of Fletcher Avenue. These services, this assessment is extremely important for us as it helps fund large projects that relieve flooding. The adoption of this assessment in 2016 made it possible for the city to begin studying the flooding issues in the Lower Peninsula watershed as a co-funded project with the Southwest Florida Water Management District. So that project I was just talking about was the Lower Peninsula Watershed Management Plan, and that's the one that I'm sure a lot of you will be interested in. Here I have a map of the Lower Peninsula watershed boundary, which basically encompasses all of the land south of Euclid Avenue down to the Air Force Base. And when I use the term watershed, I'm referring to a drainage basin, which is basically any area of land where precipitation collects and drains off into a common outlet, such as a river or a bay or another body of water, a pond or a lake. In our case, it's the ocean. This study began in 2016 and it just finished last year. As I previously stated, it was a co-funded project with the Water Management District, and they split the project 50-50 with us, which was pretty nice. This study was really crucial for the city because we've always known about the widespread flooding issues in this area, but for the first time we were able to study the entire watershed from a regional standpoint in order to determine the flooding hotspots in the watershed and to come up with solutions to those spots in the form of major capital improvement projects. And just quickly, I want to say, when I say a regional standpoint, I mean studying an area in order to determine projects that alleviate flooding from a regional perspective, not just solving the flooding on 1 or 2 streets, but trying to solve flooding for an entire drainage basin. That was important to the city. Yeah.
When you say you're studying an area, what exactly does that mean?
So that means that for this particular study, we contracted out to an engineering consultant, and they came up with basically a model. I'm going to get into that a little bit further and how exactly we studied the Lower Peninsula watershed. But it's basically we outsourced it to another consultant with a lot of input from city staff and other agencies to discuss and determine the flooding hotspots. But I'm going to get into that in just a second, Jeff. So let me keep rolling on here. So I'm going to dig in a little bit into the nitty gritties of how we actually modeled this watershed and how we studied it. So I'll just give you a brief overview. This stuff can get a little complicated, but as I stated earlier, the watershed is basically all of the land south of Euclid Avenue down to the Air Force Base, which is over 5,500 acres. We study this area by using high-powered computer models that predict flooding based on real-world information and rainfall data. So we basically input all the data for our existing stormwater system into this computer model, and then it simulates rainfall patterns in order to tell us how badly things currently flood. This allows us to determine those hotspots I was talking about, and then model new scenarios in order to relieve flooding for those hotspots. Creating those models and gathering all that data takes a very long time. If you're at all familiar with like FEMA floodplain maps or anything like that, the methodology that we use to come up with this study is very similar to the methodology that FEMA uses to come up with their floodplains, even though we weren't developing floodplains for FEMA or anything like that for this watershed. So we began the modeling process by subdividing the overall watershed into smaller sub-watersheds. And for Lower Peninsula, this included 16 major sub-watersheds. So you can see there's 16 different sub-watersheds here, and we delineate those sub-watersheds by topography, basically, the area, the highs and lows of the land, basically, and where things drain on the land. And you can see there's a few coastal areas in here, and that just means that the water in that sub-watershed drains directly to the ocean. After that, we then again further subdivide the watershed into subbasins. For Lower Peninsula, this ended up being 887 subbasins, which you can see here. There are all these small little squiggly red lines. It's kind of hard to see. But subdividing basins like this allows our engineers to study each basin in great detail in order to produce more accurate flood predictions from a regional standpoint. So we first zoom out really far, and then we zoom in really closely and focus on each individual subbasin. Sometimes that's 1 or 2 streets, or it's a giant lake or a pond in itself. And then we gradually start to build the model from inside out, basically. This map basically shows you the existing stormwater system for the Lower Peninsula watershed. This system is essentially made up of pipes, ponds, and ditches that flow towards junctions and then eventually out to the ocean. So when I say junctions, that either represents like a manhole or a retention pond or just another low area or something like that. But it helps us to kind of mold that model and get everything going in the proper direction out to the bay, basically. Our models dump rainfall on this system, and then it simulates water flowing through all of these elements simultaneously to show us where the problems are located. So it's kind of cool how that all happens. It's a very long iterative process. This is a map of what we call a digital elevation model, and it basically shows you with quite remarkable accuracy the areas of high and low elevation throughout the watershed. So the red, orange, and yellow areas are higher in elevation, and the blue, purple, and greens are lower in elevation. And with the exception of a few man-made features, such as the Crosstown Expressway, most of the peninsula lies below elevation 20. So it just goes to show how low this area really is. And you can see from this map that it reflects pretty closely with reality. The areas like around West Shore being very low, and also some areas around Bay Shore. And then of course the Port Tampa area, which we all know is very low in elevation. These elevation models help us to determine basically how water flows across the land, and we use it to basically overlay our flooding results onto this map, and then it can kind of show us, where those really bad issues are located. So after we gather and input all of the different types of data into our model, we then run the model to determine where the flooding hotspots are located. We can then begin to conceptualize proposed projects that alleviate flooding from a regional standpoint. So as a result of the Lower Peninsula Watershed Study, I'm going to focus only on the area south of Gandy for the purpose of this meeting. The city conceptualized 4 major capital improvement projects as shown on the map here. These 4 color-coded areas represent the areas where the city plans to make future upgrades to the existing stormwater system to reduce flooding. The red area on this map is referred to as the West Regional Project. The yellowish gold area is referred to as the Southwest Regional Project. The blue area is the East Regional Project, and this pinkish purple area is known as the Southeast Region. The color-coded areas here represent the drainage basin or the watershed that will benefit as a result of these future projects. And where you see the large green lines on the map, those represent our proposed stormwater system upgrades, which include like large new pipes and improved conveyance systems. The city also conceptualized these projects based on historical community concerns to maximize our flood reduction benefits and to make sure we were serving as many people as possible. The city maintains a historical database of past flooding from private property owners, and this was really useful for us as we were coming up with these projects. So now I'm going to focus on our first project that we are starting, and you all might have some interest in this project, which is the Southeast Region project. From the overall Lower Peninsula Watershed Management Plan, we came up with 7 total capital improvement projects, and this Southeast Regional project is the first to get underway. This Southeast watershed has a lot of existing flooding problems, as I'm sure you all are aware of. At the upstream end of this watershed is the Tyson Ditch system, and the city has historically had a lot of problems with this area. So this project is proposing to install a very large box culvert, which is basically a rectangular pipe underground down Himes Avenue, Thorpe Street, and down Averill Avenue, all the way out to the bay at Bayshore Boulevard. We're also going to be installing some other smaller lateral pipes that will tie into the future box culvert and alleviate flooding on surrounding streets. The city has selected an excellent design build team to construct this project, and the city is also, again, seeking co-funding from the Water Management District. As this is a regional flood relief project, it is extremely large in scope and in magnitude, and this project will likely cost around $20 to $30 million. This particular map I'm showing you here is subject to change as the design process progresses, but you can expect what is built to be pretty similar to this. Some of the benefits that you can expect to see from this project obviously include reduced flooding in residential areas within the watershed, improved driving conditions during heavy rain events, as well as improved water quality. The city will be exploring many different green infrastructure solutions for this project to reduce pollutant loading into Hillsborough Bay. And one aspect of this project will include some upgrades to the existing ELAT park and the McDill 48-acre property. There's already a very large existing box culvert that runs throughout the park, and the city is planning to either remove or upgrade that culvert. The design is still preliminary for the ELAT park, and I'm not the project manager for this project, but I can say that the city is committed to preserving the park in its current natural form. The city wants to preserve as many trees in the park as possible and also protect the native wildlife species that inhabit the park. We won't be adding any concrete or asphalt roads or trails inside the park, but rather we plan to utilize the park area for added water quality benefits that do not take away from the beauty or the serenity of the park. We know that this park is very important and very special to many people in South Tampa, especially south of Gandy, and we plan to keep it that way. There will be very strict and stringent permitting requirements for this project, and the city is already working with different agencies and partners to come up with the best possible design. The design build team is already working with the City Parks and Recreation Department, the Hillsborough County Parks Department, and the Florida Communities Trust, which is part of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And I believe they own or maintain the land. I'm not certain about that. So now to discuss the schedule of the project a little bit. The design for the project is officially underway as of last month, which is very exciting. The design will take about 1 year to complete. While the design for the project is winding down, our contractor expects to begin construction on the project by the spring of 2021. And the entire project should take about 2 to 3 years to complete, which is pretty standard for projects of this size. I can't give any other specifics on the construction phase at this time since we're still in the design phase and it's so early on in the project, but there will absolutely be future city and town hall meetings with the residents in this area to discuss the project and solicit information from the public. So that is all I have for this project at this time, but if you all have any other questions for this project, or if you'd like to speak to someone about the project, I highly encourage you to visit our website for the project, which is just lpstormwater.com. And we also have a project hotline that you can call for more information. The city has retained a public relations company for this project in order to communicate our plans with the residents and to help them stay informed and be as transparent as we possibly can. So again, if there's any other project-related questions for the Southeast Region project, please visit lpstormwater.com. And lastly, I just want to make you all aware of our transportation and stormwater call center. If you ever need to contact the city and let us know about any maintenance or operations-related issues or requests, please call our call center. It's 274-3101. The people that answer the phones there are excellent and they're super helpful, and they will be sure to direct your issues or requests to the right people to get the job done. I mean, it's anything from clogged pipes, curb or street gutter repair, ditch or pond maintenance, erosion issues, and of course, flooding issues. Any and all stormwater or transportation related comments, issues, or questions, please call our stormwater or transportation and stormwater call center. So that is all I have for everybody today. If you have any questions or anything, I'd be happy to try and answer some of those.
Great. Ben, you want to go ahead and take that off?
Yeah.
This share. And thanks everybody for watching. If you just tune in, I'm Bill Carlson, Tampa City Council member for District 4, South Tampa. And we've got Jeff Natupsky, who's a community leader, neighborhood leader in South Tampa and helped set this up. We've got Ben and Vic from the City of Tampa staff. As I tell people, sometimes city council members are kind of like when you call a customer service hotline and you don't get what you want, then you ask for the supervisor. That's city council. Sometimes we can pass policies, but we also help to interface with staff. And as I was mentioning earlier, we've got a great team working, and now we've got money and projects moving forward on this issue. Sean Brown posted earlier that at least where he was watching this, he couldn't read the slides. So would you all mind posting afterwards the PowerPoint to, maybe it's on that website you mentioned, but if you could post underneath this feed, that would be great. And I'll ask the first question that we've got online. And then what we're going to do is Jeff and I are going to go back and forth asking questions. But we've got, is it Carolyn Fanning asked the question, did you say the city keeps a record of flooding complaints? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so we do. I can't remember how far the database of flooding complaints goes back to, but we keep a spatial database of all of our past flooding complaints. Usually those complaints get called in by police officers, and then they're dispatched through our call center. And then they send us a report, usually after strong rainstorm events, and then we can kind of see it on a map where those areas are. But I believe that's all public record and information. If everybody wants to see that, they could contact us and we can provide that either through a map or some other way. And we have different ways to present that information. So yeah, we do keep a record of historical flooding complaints in the city.
And if you're just to remind everybody too, if you're watching this live, if you're watching on Facebook, you can post underneath the feed or to the right. If you're watching on PC, post your questions and we're happy to get to them and answer them. If you're watching this after 1 o'clock on Wednesday, sometime, email us and we put our email address in there. Mine's bill.carlson@tampagov.net. Jeff, you want to ask the next question?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So I guess like what I'd like to start with, Ben, is with all of these projects coming up, with the roads, with stormwater, what can the neighborhood leaders, the association leaders do to have a dialogue, to be able to have input on these projects and maybe present a point of view that you may not see because you're not necessarily living down there?
Yeah, no, that's a totally valid statement and question. I know that for all 4 of these large capital improvement projects that we have south of Gandy coming up in the years coming, we do want to have a very robust public outreach aspect of the projects and touch as many people and get as much information as we can. I know the Southeast Region project, like I said, we retained a public relations company just for that sole reason. All of the contact information for our design build team for that Southeast Region project is on that lpstormwater.com website that I was talking about. If you want to ever get in contact with the team, ask any questions or set up a town hall meeting or something like that, they'd be happy to accommodate that. But we try and, as early as possible in the project, contact the community leaders for different civic associations like yourself, and really solicit that public input, because maybe we haven't done it in the past, but especially with our new pipes project, we really want to impact as many people as we possibly can in a positive manner.
Good. And I got a couple notes and questions specifically in the Port Tampa region of South of Gandy. So there's a lot of new construction going on, some new developments, new houses are being built up. And what we're noticing is happening is with the new construction of the homes, they're raising the land. And the water now is flowing and is brushing to the adjacent properties. So is there any type of regulation in which new construction needs to put into place to facilitate bringing that water somewhere else?
Absolutely. Yes, there are codes and regulations. All of those developments that are being constructed in the Port Tampa area, especially, we have a code in our stormwater manual. You can't adversely impact your neighbor by building up a land too high or pushing floodwaters onto somebody else's property. And so I know it seems like, and that was the case down in Port Tampa with some of the areas, but I can't say specifically what happened for one of the developments in Port Tampa where I would know we had a lot of problems. I know we've worked hard with the consultant and the contractor to address those situations. But anytime you're bringing in a new development and you raise the land, you have to compensate for that flood volume that you would have displaced. So usually that's with a retention pond or another piping system. But basically, if you're going to raise the land, we make you design a system that captures all the stormwater in your development and then routes it to a central point like a retention pond, so you don't adversely impact somebody. This stuff, it goes through not only the city of Tampa, but the water management district. And if there's like wetland impacts or something like that, it'll go to FDEP. But we take a really keep a close eye on that during the
Ben, my rebuttal on that would be, okay, so hey, we all understand this is the way you should do things. Now what happens after things are built and now we see 6 months later, more flooding, more problems? What kind of recourse is there for adjacent neighbors, for leaders to take 6 months after the project's done, the builders have moved on? Then what? Because that's what I'm seeing is happening now.
Yeah, that's a good question. It can really go a lot of different ways. if it's been found that the development hasn't been built the way it was supposed to and the way it was designed and permitted, we can make the contractor go back and dig up the land again and make it right. I'm not saying that that can happen everywhere. Sometimes there's some legal recourses and the attorneys get involved in stuff like that, but it's frustrating to see that, to say the least. I know. Obviously, we maintain the database of flooding complaints, so we're aware of all those issues. It's an unfortunate situation, but there are ways that we can still make the contractor go back in and make it right if we determine that something has been built
What do you think is to that point? What do you think is the long-term fix there? Because I guess there's a basic level that you have to build up new homes, and the homes that are already there are not as high, and so we know that there are lots of complaints about rolling in. What is it? Is it digging ditches or drainage ponds? What do you think is the long-term solution?
If I may, Councilman, this is Vic Pide. So a couple of things. That was a very good question, and it has been a pain point. This was also identified in the Transforming Campus Tomorrow Development Services Committee. So the 5 committees that the mayor had, one of them was development services. And one of the concerns identified there was inspection and follow-up of developments. This is something that our planning and development group under Carol Post's leadership is actually working on. They're making some structural changes to the team and how the permitting process kind of completes the loop of inspection after a project to do that due diligence before they get the certificate of occupancy. I know that this was specifically addressed, and we'll be happy to provide more information, or you can even look up tampagov.net or just Google tampagov.net T3, and you should get to the Transforming Campus Tomorrow page and look at all of the recommendations under that. So we are looking at this at a higher level to address this specifically and give it not just resources and attention, but also follow through with process. That's happening as we speak.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, so two suggestions that I can kind of bring up about the Port Tampa area. One on the streets where we got these beautiful brick roads. We love those roads. Now, what I've noticed is the curbs on those roads aren't the slanted ones that most neighborhoods have. They're built up probably 7 to 8 inches. So what I am visually seeing living in that area is the water sits in between the curbs and it sits there days on end. My suggestion, and I'd be curious to know, is there a way that the city can go in and replace the high curbs with the slanted ones to allow water to flow into the yards?
Okay. Again, good question. And I'll touch upon streets and their impact as well. But on brick streets, we love brick streets as well. They're actually very resilient. They drain water better than impervious surfaces. And so historical curbs on these brick streets were basically ballasts. They're granite rock. And as we go in, one project at a time and restore and replace some of these brick streets, we would make improvements to the curbs as well. To date, our challenge with transportation has been resources and funding. But our region did approve the All for Transportation surtax, which is being challenged. We're hoping that still comes through because that's really going to allow us to restore our roads and sidewalks to better condition. But just on that point of roadways, real quick, another challenge we have with flooding is street flooding. So, Ben talked about systemic flooding and how we address the watershed and find out what the pain points are. But we still have street flooding issues, and we're aware of it. And oftentimes, that happens because of our very rich and excellent tree canopy that we have. And what happens is the roots kind of pop up either sidewalks or parts of roadway. So where your roadway profile is made to drain and gravity is the only thing that we have to do that, a root popping out might impede that flow, creating pockets of flooding. Now, these are things on top of systemic flooding issues that we look to resolve as well. Some of them are partly stormwater related. Some of them are just, best practices. So I know that Ben and his team are working with our transportation group to identify what are different ways, because clipping roots is not always an option. Sometimes it's detrimental to the tree, and we're trying to strike a balance between preserving that canopy, and we have a very rich and dense canopy, with providing adequate conveyance both for stormwater as well as for transportation. So,
Vic, follow-up question, and this is from Carolyn Fanning. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong again, but the following question is, some of our issues might be solved just by adding storm drains on certain corners. Can that be done?
I'll let Ben answer the question, but I think there's a design element to it. Ben, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so that would obviously seem like the easiest solution, but it depends if there's already a stormwater system in the area. We can't just put in a drain in a pipe that doesn't really go anywhere. If there's a ditch system on the street, we might be able to tie the drain in the pipe into that ditch system to flow somewhere else. But you kind of have to look at it from a little bit larger perspective, like where is that water ultimately going to go? So in cases where we want to solve small pocket flooding issues on streets, we do like to put in like curb or grate inlets and tie them in with a pipe, but it has to make sense from a design standpoint if there's a stormwater system in the immediate vicinity to tie into. And if there isn't, we have to construct one and tie it into the nearest system.
Ben, where does that water go now? So the water, let's say south of Gandia, flows into the sewage and it disappears. Where does it go next?
Yeah, so we actually have a separate storm and wastewater system. There are stormwater pipes underground, and then there's dirty wastewater pipes underground. And that water gets collected in those pipes, and it then goes out to ponds, retention ponds, but ultimately the ocean. So the Hillsborough and Old Tampa Bay.
And to follow up on that, I got a grandiose idea, and of course, money is always a concern. But while I got you gentlemen here, I'm gonna throw this out there. So I noticed, so West Tampa has the big West Tampa water tower, and it's drinking water. My idea is, what about a south of Gandy, a SOG water tower, but it, instead of flowing to be drinking water, a backup reservoir for water to flow up into this, nice tower to store it until it could settle into the sea. Is that realistic?
So to get water up to that really high elevation, you would have to pump it, and that would require some really massive pumps, and pumps are not very sustainable and not very resilient, and they're very cost and labor intensive. So, and you'd have to probably create a really, really large reservoir that high up to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
So it'd probably be a very pricey project. But that's basically the concept behind a retention pond. You dump water into an area, and then it can kind of settle out and attenuate that stormwater volume before it releases it further downstream. So I like where your head's at.
Jeff always has creative ideas. So we have a couple more questions from the audience. Stephanie Pointer. Hi, Stephanie. She has a question. She says, are you planning to put grass on these projects or something more Florida friendly?
So are you talking about, I would imagine like on the sides of the street, in the ditches, or so
she doesn't say so.
What's that?
She doesn't say exactly. So,
okay.
I mean, you talked about the impervious surface under parking, but in other areas, if it makes sense, would you put grass or landscaping on top of it?
Yeah, definitely. We want to put more sustainable and resilient infrastructure in, green infrastructure. We really like, they're called bioswales. They're like little ditches on the side of the road where they capture stormwater and then treat it before it percolates into the ground. in the, I know in the park area, the ELAP park area, we're definitely going to incorporate some of those elements. But where we put the box culvert in down the street, we're just going to replace it with asphalt, obviously, and make the streets a little bit nicer. But yeah, we will definitely try and put in as many pervious surfaces as humanly possible for these projects.
Yeah, if I could add on to that, that's actually a very important performance measure for us. I'm getting a little feedback. Ben, could you mute if possible? Yeah. So as far as impervious surfaces are concerned, that's a critical performance measure for us. What we'd like to do going forward is one, not just create more opportunities, but measure it and share it with the community. Another opportunity that you'll see for us adding landscaping is as part of our roadway projects in medians or on the sides, or adding street trees that kind of create one, more shade for pedestrian, but kind of a narrower profile for drivers to feel a little more comfortable and safe. All of this will be developed as a strategy through our transportation moves plan. The moves plan is a whole different conversation, but we're happy to share any information related to that as well.
Vic, I'm so glad you brought up about trees and landscaping. So how do we go about getting more trees put in our median? So for example, if you drive down Dale Mabry and once you get south of Gandy, we have all this beautiful, lovely median space with what I call those little ugly red flowers. How do we get more trees put there as well as West Shore, Manhattan, Inner Bay? How do I do that, sir?
So I can't speak to Dale Mabry because that's a state road, but the simple answer is to demand that we conduct better engagement one project at a time. So if we have a roadway surfacing project, and I can speak to the city, we have every intention of doing that, of conducting community outreach before a project. Historically, I think what we've done is come out to the public and say, oh, here's what we're doing. Kind of like this forum as well. But where we want to go, and it's more methodical, it costs a little bit more money, but that moves plan is very community driven. And I can give you one example. We currently designed a section of Columbus Drive in East Tampa. And our original plan was to add bike lanes because that was going to be a bike boulevard, part of a connected bike system and all of that. But we engaged with the community and their feedback was, well, we don't want bike lanes. We want more landscaping and we want more sidewalk. And that's fine. I mean, it's very contextual. We have the tools that are needed to, produce appropriate designs, but the answer lies in more engagement and better engagement. And a lot of that responsibility lies with us. We recognize that. And you'll see us do more engagement going forward.
Yeah, and I'll just say, as I mentioned at the beginning, we've got a great team at the city now, and I can tell you from the mayor and city council around, everybody's committed to listening to the public, and we've had a couple questions about that. I'll ask Ben at the end to make sure to give email addresses and websites so that we can make sure that we get complaints and feedback and ideas from everybody. I want to ask a question of my own. How does McDill factor into all this? McDill was on the plan, but I didn't see any red lines there. So are you all partnering with them, and how does that work out? Do they have any flooding?
I'll mute myself. So McDill, I don't think that they have reached out to us to join in on the project, on any of the projects. I don't think they have. From what I've known, I think they have a couple of flooding issues maybe around their entrance that we're trying to work with them on. But I know that we were in contact with McDill at one point, and they declined to be a part of the projects going forward.
Do you know when McDill was built? Was it built up? Is that why maybe they don't have flooding? Or
I'm sure it was to some extent, especially some of their runways. But they probably have their own. I know they have their own drainage system with ponds and pipes and stuff like that. So they probably don't have a lot of problems down there. That would be my guess. And I could be totally wrong on that because it's not city jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So that would be why.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. We're getting to maybe the last one or two questions, so make it good.
I don't think I have a question. I think I'll end with a statement. I'd like to say to the neighbors out there, south of Gandy, as you see, we're getting a lot of attention. There's a lot of projects happening. So my suggestion is always, don't go to the councilman and don't go to the city folks with just complaints. Instead, come up with some solutions, come up with some ideas. We have the eyes and ears of a lot of public officials. So I just want to encourage everybody to get involved and do it positively, do it nicely, because I've never seen so much attention from city council and the city of Tampa. So I do appreciate, your attention there, Councilman.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And thanks for all your leadership. And ironically, Sean Brown just asked a question too, emerging leader in south of Gandy. He said, any consideration given to deepening current stormwater ponds in the area to increase capacity?
So we can only deepen ponds to a certain extent. In Florida, we have a really high groundwater table. So that kind of limits how deep we can dig a retention pond before it just doesn't really do anything for storage volume. But where it makes sense, we definitely want to look into maximizing our storage capacity for ponds. So it is a possibility to a certain extent.
Great. Anybody have any, Vic, Ben, any closing comments, any other suggestions or thoughts?
Yeah, just on the community engagement piece, kind of where we left off with Jeff earlier. If any of the neighbors or anyone in the community has concerns, of course, reach out, to the concerned departments, and usually you'll get a response. But also reach out to your neighborhood presidents, because one of the first mechanisms for us to reach out to the community is to reach out to the neighborhoods themselves, and through the neighborhood association. So whoever the neighborhood association leaders are, they will get a lot of our communications. And then the other thing that we're trying to do better is get on forums that you all might already be on, like Nextdoor. So feel free to make suggestions to your neighborhood association, and through them we'll likely be able to communicate more effectively.
Ben, you want to tell us the website and the email address again, or the hotline number, so that people can call if they have any suggestions or complaints?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website for the Southeast Region project is just lpstormwater.com. And then the project hotline is 813-642-3595. And like I said, all the information on the project is on that website, and the contact information for everybody involved in that project with the city and our design build team.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. And please, anybody watching, especially if you're south of Gandy, please hit the share button. We're doing this because we want to spread the information as widely as possible. We want people to have full information. We want them to know how to contact their government. And as we say, there are a lot of new people moving into the area, and we want to make sure all of our new neighbors know this information. The city and other government agencies want to hear your feedback. They want to work with you. They want your feedback and ideas on parks and where these pipes are going. So please let them know. And I'm your city council member for your district. So if you would like to reach me, please email me, bill.carlson@tampagov.net. And we're happy to work with you on any issues you have. Thanks again to Jeff for setting this up, and thanks to Vic and Ben for taking your time to do this. Thanks everybody for listening.